Dear Béla, dear participants, welcome to our Global Labor University webinar called Just Transition and Social Dialogue with our expert Béla Galgóczi. Edlira, just one question. Is everybody now online or do we have to wait?
Still no, everybody is in, so you can proceed.
Okay. Before we start, I would like to give some explanation. I mean, it's the last webinar. Perhaps most of you were already visiting another of these webinars from GLU, but again, I would like really to give some explanation how the webinar is taking place and some more information. First of all, I would like to inform you that this session is being recorded. It means that if you don't want to appear, please let us know now. So I'm checking if somebody is saying no. So for everybody, it is okay. Perfect. I know that everybody knows how it works, but here again, keep the microphone off unless you take the floor for a question. About the structure of this workshop, we will start with two main questions I developed and sent to Béla before. I took the question out of the discussion we had all together in the discussion section of this course. So two main questions. We will have Béla giving some brief remarks on these question, and then we open up the floor for your questions. And at the end, again, more time also dedicated to more open question, 10-15 minutes, depending on how long we are talking. Yes, that's it for now. I hope my instructions were clear so that we can start with the first question. Yes, Béla, we know each other for some years, and I'm really happy to moderate this webinar with you. Béla Galgóczi, you are a senior researcher at the European Trade Union Institute since 2003, so for a long time. Main research field over the years have been capital and labor mobility in the European Union, third country migration and income convergence. But your current research focus, and that is what is more interested, that we are more interested in, is just transition toward a carbon neutral economy. And that was the topic of the course from the GLU webinar and the topic now. Béla, first question. In the comment section of your video lecture, we had participants from Argentina to Zambia, from Philippines to Turkey, from everywhere, and they were reported that their governments have included the concept of just transition in their policies, but its implementation is sometimes limited. What do you think should be the role of trade unions to push their government to move from policy papers to really concrete action?
Oh, yes. Okay. So?
Big question, Béla.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, big, yes. So anyway, thanks a lot. I think when trying to discuss this question, we need to be aware of the context. Yeah. So first of all, it is more or less clear that just transition as a concept has become mainstream. It's established. It's even a fashion. So everybody is trying to devote attention to just transition, or at least pretending to do so. Yeah, so it belongs to kind of the policy set of almost anybody, from governments to even companies. So this is one thing, and this is, first of all, it's a big success because trade unions were pushing this concept already from the 1980s, and then international institutions, the ILO was having a crucial role in establishing it. So it's a success, but at the same time, like with everything that is coming mainstream, there is a danger of hollowing out, that it is kind of meaning everything and nothing, and it's just a phrase like there was corporate social responsibility some time ago and things like that, you know, and then it's just a phrase, a flat, and that is a danger. So, and of course you can see that in practice. This is the one thing to have in mind. The other thing is that just transition is an incredibly complex phenomenon and issue. So really, so I mean, and that means that one can easily get lost. So what are we talking about? Yeah? So because on the one hand, in its broad and international context, there was also climate justice is an important part of that. Yeah, global north, global south, responsibilities, effects, how to equalize that, and also like climate mitigation policies and efforts. This is not really what we are. It's very important, but this is not what we are talking about now. What we are talking about now is that becoming climate neutral for any economy makes a fundamental change. It is a full-scale restructuring of everything, from agriculture to industry to mobility to energy, everything. And this is more than accepted now. So I have to say, and this is again something new, that this is not anymore kind of a wishful thinking and nice, responsible, climate conscious people being nice and good and want to do something good for the planet. It's not about that anymore. It's a fact. And it's a market reality. So, I mean, it is already companies like Glencore, the mining company, or the Polish government that has never wanted to do anything on decarbonization, realize that it is a market fact. So if you are not coping with that, you are getting lost. So it's so that simple. So the green transition itself has become a reality. That means that so it's a restructuring challenge. We already had a lot of restructuring challenges with technological change, globalization, and so on. But this is one that is now compelling, and it is actually a reason that we can acknowledge as a good reason. So it is not when trade unions were complaining that the capital is making restructuring because of having more profits and relocating parts of production here and there to have cheaper and things like that. It is something that is necessary, but it costs. It has a huge cost on workers, on employment, on social effects, with higher energy price and so on. So this means that in order to make it seriously happen, governments, particularly governments, need to pay attention that this is being just process. That means that the transitions that are attached to it are, not putting the burden on the workers and their employees, because they are not responsible for that. You know, even a coal miner is not responsible. A steel worker not responsible. An automobile worker is not. and so on. So, but their jobs is either going to be lost, phased out, maybe in a longer period of time, so not tomorrow, or will be radically transformed. For automobile workers, those who are working in the diesel engine segments of the value chain are clear that they will lose that kind of job. But they have to do something else, and they should be retrained, and so on and so on and so on. It is not happening tomorrow, but it will happen actually in 5 years. So you have to be prepared for that. The energy transition, so well, coal, gas, more or less out, yeah, and then you have to develop, of course, new energy resources. So all these are huge transitions. And in order to make it happen, governments need to have a concept. And what does it mean, a concept? So it means that policy, and they're not policy papers, yeah, sure, and declarations, because there are often quite a lot of declarations. For example, in the European Union, it's also necessary to include just transition in country concepts. Energy plans, national energy and climate plans, for example, it's included, but it's often very empty. It's nothing there. So you need concrete policies for that. And that is also a tricky thing, that what are the concrete policies, because concrete policies you need for each different part of the economy, different policies. Yeah. So I mean, there are two common things. The one common thing is that you need to have a labor market policy framework that is encouraging change, that helps change, that helps those people who have to change jobs. This means concrete labor market programs, assistance for training, if necessary, early retirement schemes, and special individual targeted employment counseling when it's about mass dismissals, like mining companies being closed, or the mine is closed, then all the people need to have a future. So I mean, this is a labor market policy tool that needs to be there in the government policy arsenal. The other important thing is industrial policy, to help industries to change in a intelligent way. Regional policy, because this means, for example, when there are regions that are depending on coal, and the coal mine and the power plant will be closed in 5 years, in 10 years, in 8 years, then it can happen that the whole region is suffering a huge economic shock. There will be nothing more there. And other jobs are depending on the coal mine, not only the miners, but different other parts of the value chain, and even restaurants or servicing jobs around. So for this means that the government, and means not only the central government, but the local government, needs to have a concept of policy, regional policy, investments, how to deal with investors, how to deal with the local employers, with the municipality, and so on, and develop ideas. It is not about tomorrow, yeah, because it doesn't work like that, It is not, just to make sure, it is not a just transition if there is an announcement that tomorrow we close down the whole mine and basta. Béla, it happened. Yes, okay, it's getting too long now. Yeah, sure. So anyway,
no, I would like to give the floor to our participants.
Yes. So
please, if you want to take the floor, just raise your hand and then unmute yourself. Or, of course, you have the possibility to ask some question in the chat.
Yes. So
who wants to start and ask a question?
Let's collect questions now, and then I will.
But thank you, Béla.
Of
course, I think it was also what we could read in the discussion section of the video, that so often the national plan energy of the are so often empty full of words but empty. So, Vladimir, please ask your question.
Thank you. Okay, before I ask a question, if you allow me, I would like to briefly comment what colleague Galgóczi just said, because I am trade unionist from Montenegro, and good afternoon to everyone. And I have to say that implementing a just transition agenda in reality, in practice, will be very, very tough job, because we have to admit that, an example, in my country, workers consider transition not as a solution, but kind of treat. And we have to understand them, because based on their previous experiences, because we passed through a lot of transition, social transition, economic transition, privatization, etc. And as a rule, all the cost of all those transitions have been paid by workers, by redundancies, by unstable jobs and precarious jobs. And when we talk with them about just transition and green economy, etc., I feel that they are reluctant to accept it. And there are some practical reasons. One is high unemployment rate already presented, and people, according to their experience, very hard changing the jobs and finding new jobs. And when we talk with them about just transition agenda, they are a little bit reluctant. So for trade unions, it's gonna be very tough job in order to make some unique voice regarding to just transition and toward our social partners. Particularly, this is very difficult period, because we have COVID crisis, and it is not only health crisis, it is, as a rule, financial crisis, economical crisis, and social crisis that accompanies health crisis.
Vladimir,
okay. I know.
ask your question.
Sorry. It is my daily job. So when I start, I can't finish. So I would like to ask Béla, is there some positive examples of just transition and trade union role in just transition in our region? Because he is from Hungary, because I am from Montenegro. Regarding to ILO, we belong to same sub region. Thank you, and sorry.
Béla, before you answer the question, I would like to give the floor to Monovara and then to Jason, and then all together you answer the question. Monovara, sorry.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Béla?
Yes,
oh,
we can.
Thank you. Actually, just transition, what I mean, workers, especially those who work in areas that cause damage to the environment, such as coal or well, if they ever lose a job, and if the reason for being what is that the environment is being damaged, they should be relieved of their previous job and put to another job. That system is known as just transition. Under this system, various economical, social, mental, and physical help was provided to the workers. But it's a 30-year-old thing. The term just transition has been used in various ways since then, one by one, depending on the context. So what will be what will be trade unions' view about just transition? My question is.
Monowara, where are you from? So that we.
I'm from Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, all right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Jason?
Hi, my name is Jason. I'm from Norway. In Norway, we have a lot of hydro energy from dams, and we have a lot of oil and gas. The one problem now, as from my political view, is that the big oil company Equinor, formerly known as Statoil, wants to electrify their platforms in the North Sea with electricity from land, and that's gonna. I don't know if this is a question or just me wanting to say something. But, the problem is then that the prices will go up, and it will go, and the workers will feel it, or the normal people. We have also started with windmills in Norway, but that we had to stop with because of the environmental issues from where you actually place it, because you have to destroy lots of area to place it. And then again, and you're talking about mines. I don't know, it's about coal mines, but we need to. We can't forget we're going to need mines, because we need a lot of minerals like copper and things like that. And that, I think, maybe the unit to kind of make a question here. It's going to be important, I think, for the unions to kind of push people from coal mining to other mineral mining. I don't have a question. I'm sorry.
No.
All
right.
But just remember, just one thing. Remember the environment when you want to build something. Don't like.
And there is still a question there. So
yeah. So
Okay.
when you build the windmills, remember that you're going to destroy something else. So.
yeah.
All right, Jason. And the last question we're taking from Ozzy with the Che Guevara posters behind. Ozzy, question. And then Béla will answer the other 4 questions.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Béla, for that introduction. And I've actually went back and read the script of your video lecture. Quite interesting. I have a very specific question. I was actually interested by the point you were making around policies, because you mentioned that you really can't just have an isolated just transition policy. You need to look at a labor market policy framework, industrial policy, regional policy. You didn't mention energy policy, but I assumed that energy policy would be included. So my question is, can you expand a little bit on the importance of really not, from a policy point of view, that you can't simply have a just transition policy, but it has to be more integrated? That's really the question. Is it a more integrated approach one needs to look at? Or is it that you should have a just transition policy that is linked to these wider policies of industrial policy, energy policy? So just can you expand on that? Thank you.
Okay, Béla.
Yeah, thank you. Very exciting questions. Thanks a lot. Some of these are already, I think, touching upon the second question, the trade union role. Yeah. So I will flag up on this now, but I will also keep part of this or part of the answer for the second round when we are actually talking about the trade union role. So first of all, to Vladimir on yeah. So bad example, so bad experience. Yes, that's for sure, and this is not unique. I mean, probably Norway can be a little bit different, or Denmark, or so, but most countries, even in Europe and around the world, workers always had bad experience with anything that changed. Because they were delivered out, they were vulnerable, they were always drawing the short area, and certainly a lot of restructuring processes in the past were driven by profit motive only. Yeah, so cost cutting and so on. That was always putting the pressure on the worker. That was the, and of course in Eastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe, with the systemic change, with the transformation to market economy, privatization, all that. Yeah, that was always a huge hardship. Yeah, so the experiences are not good with that. But first of all, it needs to be realized, and that is one thing for trade unions. Important to realize that this time this change is inevitable, it is necessary, and it will come. And if you are not facing it, if you are not trying to shape it, you will be losing on. Even and trade unions as organizations will be losing on. So there is you need to be engaged on that. And then, yeah, positive examples in the region in Southern Eastern Europe or Western Balkans. Of course, it's not an easy question. Yeah, so I mean, even positive examples. Okay, there are positive examples in Europe for sure, even in US, Canada definitely. But on the Western Balkans, it's a little bit more tricky. Yeah, so we are all living in insecurity of jobs. Yeah, that is the general trend. Yeah, and now with the COVID crisis, it got even worse. Yeah, and that this is not really the environment when workers would be ready to change, and when so that's why even it is more important to encourage this change and help. So from the region, you know. 2 weeks ago, I had a seminar with on Slovenia on the closing down of coal mines and power stations in Slovenia. So the energy transition in Slovenia. And the one thing good was that there is social partners involvement. Yeah, so the government, the trade unions, the employers, they are in negotiation and they are in talk, and that is a precondition for success. And of course, it doesn't exist in all the countries. So that's already a good thing for Slovenia. But on the other hand, I have to say that what I heard there was, I mean, not so. Free of conflict, yeah. So even there in Slovenia, where you would expect that it's an advanced system of dealing with change and with the negotiations and social dialogue, even there it's difficult. So the government, first of all, is not really making it clear what is the timely agenda. So it is not. There is talk about 2033, but it's not yet fixed when to phase out coal in Slovenia, and the trade unions are suspicious. They are not exactly what you say. They even in Slovenia they say that they are skeptical but one good thing there is that there is regional cooperation and the future kind of engagement for future investments and what the next step would be. By the way, there were two positive examples from Eastern Europe. It's not really the Western Balkans, but in Slovakia, there was a region, Nitra region, where it was really a huge community engagement on changing the economy. And there are projects launched. So after coal. And there was another region in Poland that is not Silesia, because Silesia is really difficult, but most western region of Poland, it is Malopolska, Eastern Malopolska is it called, it's on the German border, and they have a very definite just transition plan to phase out coal. And the local government so the regional government is engaged in that. So far about that.
I would say, Vladimir, it's all in your hands to make a change in Montenegro. After
Yes,
this
and
course, now
Montenegro
you know how to do it.
Yeah, of
Béla.
course. No, it's difficult. I mean, it is really difficult. So I mean, it's just not far from Montenegro in Bulgaria, for example. The case was, it was a year, it was still before COVID because it was a physical meeting. The government representative was actually quite positive about the transition. They said, yes, we have to do the energy transition and phase out coal. But actually, they said we are obliged to do this because of the EU. We wouldn't like to do that, but we get all this money from the EU. So in one thing, we have to accept some negative issues. So we accomplish with this. Yeah. So this is kind of the general narrative, or was at least from the government, that because of the EU, we have to do this. And trying to use EU funding for making, and that is certainly in the European Union, it's an advantage that there are limited, but there are European funds that can then help this process. So then,
yeah, perhaps you could answer the question of Ozzy about the integrated approach, and then.
Oh yes, well, of course, you know, that is a basic thing, because it comes from the nature of it that you cannot have a single policy. So what single policy? You have only energy policy, but you don't have an employment policy framework, or you don't have a regional or an industrial policy, then it doesn't work. And that was already the ILO guidelines on just transition from 2015 that were kind of manifesting this concept of just transition. One of the main points in that is the holistic approach, yeah, integrated policy approach. But this is also easy to say and much more difficult in practice, because I would say even in the European Union, they have a lot of talk about it, yeah? And this is a flagship project, it's a moonshot project, it's everything, yeah? The number one priority, but still, it is not really fully integrated. So, I mean, it's not, okay, the European Green Deal has all its pillars and initiatives, and really it goes from agriculture to industry to mobility. So, well, that can be probably said. It is at least an attempt for an integrated approach, but what also depends on an integrated approach if you really implement it. Because often it is the case, for example, that there is one ministry responsible for climate and environment, the other is for employment, the other one is social and energy, and they are not talking with each other, and they have kind of different agendas. That is even existing at the European Commission. That DG Energy has a different narrative than DG Climate or DG Employment. And these are also institutional issues to deal with. So where, I will come back to the question, well, on
actually, I would say, I mean, Jason had not a real question.
Yeah.
So
I still want to have a comment on that. So I will come back to the colleague from Bangladesh on the trade role, because it's we will deal with that. And then, okay, yeah, sure.
Then we can go for it. I mean,
yeah, sure, but
yes,
let me have one comment on Norway and the Statoil, Equinor kind of thing and Norway's transition. So, of course, Norway is kind of an extreme case. Yeah, if you look in the global perspective, but even, I mean, in many ways exemplary, in green energy and so on. At the same time, it is the oil producer selling its oil to, well, anywhere in the world. And I mean, that itself is kind of an issue. And I think even if this attempt for electrification of drilling platforms and so, that is in a way a good thing, but I mean, it's only greening the process of oil drilling, but not the product. You know, the product is dirty. The problem you have with the product, yeah. So somebody will use this oil, and this is Norway should be the last country that would be dependent on selling this oil. So it would be kind of a responsibility to get out of this business. Yeah. And there is already talk about divestments and certainly any investment in oil business will dry up. But I mean, it cannot be a source of income for a country like Norway for a long time. So I mean, that's why.
Béla.
Yes,
the time is running, that's why I have to
Good, okay, let's move on.
Yeah, we had this question from Monovara, and it's also my second question. In your video lecture, you argue that the role of trade union is so important in the concept of just transition. Some of the course participants, they were reporting example from their own country, where the trade unions have been really engaged in the ecological transformation of the country. Some others noted the limited engagement of trade unions, like also Vladimir was telling before. What do you think is the role of international trade unions, such as ETUC or ETUC, supporting a more active role of national unions? Can you give us some examples from your own experience on this? So not only the role of trade unions, but also on international trade unions, federations.
Sure. Okay. Before coming to that, we need to draw attention to there is a dichotomy or even tension between trade union practices and policies at different levels. Yeah, so it's a completely different story if we talk about a company union, a regional union, a chemical industry workers union or mining workers union, or a services union or public service union, or the confederation of a national union or a European confederation. These all have, well, different policy practices and attitudes. They are not talking the same language. And it is understandable also because a miners union is extremely exposed to what is happening in the ground and try to do everything to protect their own workers. But the national federation is more kind of open-minded. They are pro-climate policy, pro-engagement, and pro-greening, and the European level unions even more so. Yeah. So first of all, there is an engagement on the policy side for ambitious climate policies. Yeah, so that has been a consensus, but at the same time, and this is in a way, different unions put different emphasis on this, but they always say that yes, climate ambition more and more, and environmental engagement. But at the same time, we want to happen it just, and we want to have a just transition framework to that, and concrete just transition policies. And this is what trade unions are implementing differently, because some trade unions turn it around to say that without just transition, there is no climate ambition. And if you don't have a just transition practice, we are not interested, and we are not supporting the greening process. Certain industrial trade unions are speaking this tone, which is understandable, but probably not very helpful. Then there are kind of more active engagement of unions. So first of all, the European level unions are engaged in the policy-making process. Yeah, so they are taking part in the social dialogue at European level, and the national level unions at national level. So this means they have an influence, or try to have an influence, on the central policy-making questions. How the climate policy is being implemented, what targets actually are, how those targets will be implemented, because there are, there are so many concrete questions to discuss. For example, we have the European emission trading system. That is one central element of the greening, but it has a lot of effects on different people. So if you are the policy framework, when it is designed, then trade unions at least have a voice to say how the national responsibilities should be. How there is an effort sharing between the countries of the poorer and the richer countries. How much help the energy intensive industries should get in order to prevent carbon leakage, which would mean that the industry moves outside the European Union. That means, for example, give free emission allowances to steel companies and chemical companies. But if you give too much of this free, which is happening now, free allowances, then the companies will be not interested in the change. So there are, and the energy price, and who is, because of course, if you have higher CO2, price, then the energy price that is still based, or at least to some extent, on fossil fuel will be more expensive, and the poorer households will be more affected than the others. So what policies are there? So trade unions have influence on this kind of lots of detailed policy issues. In the European Green Deal, there are thousands of issues, and trade unions are, yes. So that is one thing.
Béla, I will just ask you.
Okay, the one more thing, and there the trade unions, so at European level, also try to build awareness for the climate change issue, awareness that it is a change that is inevitable, so kind of motivating their membership and their also national organizations that this is a real serious thing, and you have to be engaged and you have to do something. And moreover, and the last thing on that, for example, IG Metall, Europe's biggest union, has launched now, well, it's a campaign or saying and trying to explain its membership and everybody that the change to electrical vehicles is inevitable. So they start to say that we were producing or doing the best combustion engine in the world. The best ever diesel engine is made of us. So we were doing it, but we cannot do it anymore. Finished, it's over. So to make it understand, you know, there are 2 million membership that, sorry, guys, this is finished. We have to do something else. And we have to concentrate our resources and everything we can to move on with the electrical vehicle production. And so kind of this kind of awareness raising and so on is also very, very important.
Thank you, Béla.
Okay.
For the ones who don't know,
Yes, so now
is
we have
the
the question.
metal workers union in,
Yes,
in
exactly.
Germany.
Yes.
So it's all the automotive industry in Germany. So do you have some? We have let's say 15 minutes. Do you have any question to Béla? It would be the chance now to ask, or in the chat, or raising your hand before I give the floor again to Vladimir. Perhaps somebody else.
I will also reflect upon the question of Monovara on.
Okay, I'm just checking. Nobody else. Yes, Monovara had the question, especially about the situation in Bangladesh, about just transition and trade unions.
Yes.
Okay, and Vladimir. So, but a question, please.
Thank you, but it's not easy. Good afternoon this time from train because I commute every day. I would like just to say that what Béla has said regarding international level, I could confirm that the same is projected at the national level. For the national confederation, it's much easier to adapt just position agenda, but some branch trade unions are speaking different language when it comes to just transition, and it is almost the same at the international level as I know. Sorry, it was just brief comment. Thank you.
We are happy that Vladimir is taking the train and not the car.
Oh, yeah, that's lovely.
Yes, so perhaps then a last comment in general about trade unions and just transition. Especially you were talking a lot about Europe, but in general in the world, and we have participants from everywhere, and like Monovara from Bangladesh, Béla.
Well, one of the biggest problems is that trade unions, even in Europe, have diminishing influence. Yeah, so their membership is shrinking. They are rather in a weak position. There are certain unions that are really strong, like the mentioned IG Metall, or there are several others. But in general, they are in a weak position. So it's not very easy to have their voices heard. And in many countries in the world, I mean Bangladesh certainly, India, or countries in Africa, trade unions are not very organized. So they have often they have a challenge for their existence. Yeah, so I mean they are threatened often in their very existence, and the freedom of association is not granted in many countries. So there are fundamental questions there. and one more thing that makes this whole thing harder, that we have to be aware that in many countries in the world, informal economy is extremely spread out. Almost in certain countries, up to 70% of the jobs are in the informal economy. So they are not covered by employment contract. They are not protected. There is nothing. And they are also not organized. Trade unions are not present there. For example, I heard a discussion, and there is also a good publication on just transition in India. So on Indian coal region. Just to imagine, the Indian coal region there has 10 million inhabitants. So just 10 million, yeah, it's a country in Europe. And that is a coal-dependent region. And there they are all, so not only the coal workers, but everybody there is depending on coal. And there it was said that actually those who are dependent on coal mining, 70% of those people are individual coal collectors. They are not the workers of the mining company. They are people who are just collecting the rest of the coal and selling it for their daily living. So I mean, how you deal with these people and how you help these people when the coal mine will be finished, and what can trade unions do? So trade unions are actually not really involved there. I don't have exact information on Bangladesh, but I can imagine that having known all the issues with working conditions in Bangladesh, it could be extremely difficult, even more so than in India. And one thing could be, and that is valid for not only developing countries but for all countries, that trade unions might have a better chance to manage this process if they are building up coalitions with NGOs, with environmental organizations. It happens a lot. It actually started in the United States and Canada, where they call it blue-green alliances. So alliances between the labor and the environmental organizations. And there are actually cases. For example, there was a case in the Philippines where an unjust transition could have been at least turned around or made better with a joint pressure of trade unions and civil organizations, NGOs. So that would be one way to go, and it is to make up these alliances. Yeah, thank you. So
I was unmuted, sorry. Thank you. I think it's a good positive message for the end, Béla, that you said, okay, let's try to make coalition between NGOs and trade union. Do you have another message for all the participants today, what we have to do? Most of us are trade unionists, but not only. What we can do in the next years to make it?
Now, well, I think for trade unions, it could be a good thing to convince or also to get themselves to realize that when we talk about climate change and environment, it's not about the niceties, yeah. It is this process is happening, yeah. So it's already gone. Yeah, so that's why it's a vital. It is not a additional trade union issue. You know, like there is the collective bargaining, there is the working time, and so on, and then there is somewhere there is environment and climate. No, because the environment and climate issue is exactly affecting the wage, it's exactly affecting the working time, it even affects the very existence of your job. So it is a core trade union issue. It is not a and this is, I think it's not really clear, yeah, for many trade unions that it's the absolute core business. And then they have to make their membership also aware of that, yeah.
Béla, we have also a question in the chat from Argentina, where the colleague Andrea Maggio is explaining about what universities are doing there. And the question is, which is the role of education and research workers to generate concrete solutions with production workers like union alliances?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to talk about education and training. Just to mention, for example, that our institute, the ETUI, also has a training department. And what is happening here that my colleagues in the training department are developing training courses for trade unions on green competencies. So this means that, yeah, they define green competencies in many ways and segments, and they also try to raise, of course, awareness and well show all these different aspects. So that is certainly one thing to do. We need education and training on this a lot, and well, in a way research as well. In a way research as well. Research, and for example, what we are doing here is to try to identify employment. So first you have to identify the risks and the challenges. Yeah, what is at stake? For example, if we look at the European mining industry, how many jobs are there in danger? What exactly the job transformations would look like? They are different, you know. In the coal mining industry, it's different than in the construction industry, because the construction industry will have more jobs in the future, but will have different jobs than they have now. And then the case there is to train. In coal mining, there will be no jobs, but then something else should happen, and so on. So kind of to make research on these effects, you know, and also how the workers are impacted by that, because that is the first thing to be aware of, yeah, what is coming on you, and then how to react, and then of course try to collect good practice cases from around the world, making recommendations how to deal with it. For example, in the European context, we have quite a good or halfway advanced framework for just transition for the core regions, but nothing really more than that. So for example, for the automobile industry, there are declarations about just transition, but there is nothing. But there are 14 million jobs in Europe. In coal mining, there are only 300,000 in Europe. So there are 14 million automobile jobs, and Europe only has kind of declarations there, but there is no policy framework. So what to do, and what financial means are available, what support mechanisms there are. So it's not there. So I mean, you need, well, to research on that, to point to the facts, and try to argue that make policy recommendations. So
Okay,
this kind
thank
of
you very much, Béla. So we know now more coalitions with NGOs and trade unions,
Yeah.
and of course also more coalition with and alliances between trade unions and universities. And finally, and you are pointing out in your video lecture also, as trade union, to be sure to sit on the negotiation.
Oh yeah, sure.
So we are at the end of this webinar. Thank you, Béla, for really this interesting discussion that allowed us really to learn much more than just through your video. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you for your active participation. Yes, it was the last webinar of this course, Just and Green. I hope you enjoyed this webinar and also enjoyed all these course. Thank you, Adlira, who organized also all these course.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
to
much.
all of
Thank
you. Thank you for the good discussion and the questions, and Isabel for the good moderation.
Thank you. We'll see us hopefully one day again in Brussels after the pandemic.
Okay, then bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you
Ciao,
very
ciao.
much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.